It was a bright, sunny afternoon in Maple Grove. The birds were chirping, the grass was green, and the air smelled like flowers. Maple Grove was a small, quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. At least that's what they thought. Kids rode their bikes down the street, and old folks sat on porches sipping lemonade. It was the kind of place where nothing big ever happened, or so it seemed. Now, Jake Miller was the new guy in town. He moved into a little house on Oak Street just a few months ago. It was a small place with a tiny porch, a patchy lawn, and a few windows that needed fixing. Jake didn't talk much. He kept to himself, always busy working on his house. Sometimes you'd see him painting the fence or mowing the grass. Other times he'd be hammering nails into something in his garage. He wore plain clothes, jeans and a t-shirt, and he had a quiet smile. Most people in Maple Grove didn't pay him much attention. They'd wave hello, maybe say nice day, huh? And that was it. To them, Jake was just a regular guy. Nothing special, nothing exciting. But one person didn't think Jake was so ordinary. Her name was Linda Hayes. Linda was the boss of the Homeowners Association, or HOA for short. The HOA was a group that made rules for the neighborhood, like how tall your grass could grow or what color your house could be. Linda loved being in charge. She walked around with a clipboard in her hand, writing down every little thing she didn't like. Her hair was always perfect, her shoes were shiny, and her voice was loud. As if something wasn't just right, Linda would let you know. She'd knock on your door, point at your mailbox, and say, "That's too rusty." Or she'd yell across the street, "Your trash cans are too close to the curb." Everyone called her the HOA queen behind her back. Some even said she was a little mean. Linda noticed Jake right away. She didn't like how quiet he was. She didn't like how he didn't come to the HOA meetings, and she really didn't like the window bars he put up on his house. They were metal bars, strong and sturdy, covering the windows like a cage. Jake said they were for safety. Linda said they were ugly. "This isn't that kind of neighborhood," she'd shout, waving her clipboard at him. "We don't need bars on windows here." Jake would just nod and say, "Okay, I'll think about it." But he never took them down. That made Linda mad, really mad. See, Linda thought she knew everything about everyone. She thought Jake was just some boring guy who didn't belong in her perfect little neighborhood. She'd march up to his porch, her clipboard ready, and tell him all the things he was doing wrong. "Your grass is too long," she'd say. "Your truck is too loud." Jake never argued. He'd just smile, that quiet smile, and go back to whatever he was doing. Linda didn't know it yet, but Jake wasn't scared of her. He wasn't even annoyed. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Because here's the thing, Jake wasn't just a regular guy. Oh no, he had a secret. A big, juicy secret that nobody in Maple Grove saw coming, not even Linda with her sharp eyes and loud voice. Jake wasn't who he seemed to be. He wasn't just fixing up his house for fun. He wasn't just keeping to himself because he was shy. There was something else going on, something huge, and it was about to change everything. Imagine this. What if someone thought they knew all about you, but they were totally wrong? What if they judged you before they even said hi? That's what Linda did to Jake. She looked at him and saw a quiet guy with a messy yard. She didn't see the real Jake. She didn't know what he was hiding. And that's what makes this story so fun. Because Linda's world, it was about to get flipped upside down. And Jake, he was the one holding the switch. So let me ask you something right now. What would you do if someone judged you before they even knew you? Would you get mad? Would you yell? Or would you stay quiet and wait like Jake did? Think about it. Drop your answer in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you on your couch, at school, maybe outside in the sun? Let me know. Now, this story's just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Linda thought she was the smartest person on the block. She thought she could boss Jake around like he was nobody. But Jake had a plan. He wasn't just sitting there taking it. He was watching. He was listening. And he was ready to surprise everyone, especially Linda. I picture Jake on his porch that sunny afternoon. The sky was blue, the breeze was soft, and Linda was stomping down the street toward him. Her clipboard was out, her pen was clicking, and her face was all scrunched up like she just smelled something bad. "Jake Miller," she called out, loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Those window bars have got to go." Jake looked up from his work. He was fixing a chair or something, a hammer in his hand. He didn't say much. Now just nodded and said, "I hear you, Linda." But his eyes, they had a little sparkle, like he knew something she didn't. Linda didn't see that sparkle. She was too busy talking. "This is Maple Grove," she said. "We have rules, we have standards. You can't just move in here and do whatever you want." She pointed at the window bars like they were the worst thing she'd ever seen. "Those make the house look like a jail." "What's next?" "Barbed wire." Jake put down his hammer and wiped his hands on his jeans. "They're just for safety," he said, calm as could be. Linda huffed. "Safety? Ha, we don't need that here. This is a good neighborhood." Now Jake didn't argue, he didn't raise his voice. He just went back to his chair, tapping the hammer like nothing happened. But inside he was thinking, he was planning. See, Jake wasn't worried about Linda's rules. He wasn't even worried about her yelling. He had bigger things on his mind. Things Linda couldn't even dream of. She thought she was in control, but she was not even close. The neighbors watched all this from their windows. Some shook their heads, some laughed a little. "Linda's at it again," they'd say. They didn't think much of Jake either. To them, he was just the new guy, quiet, boring, maybe a little weird with those window bars. Nobody asked why he put them up. Nobody wondered who he really was. They just went on with their day, sipping lemonade and riding bikes. But Jake, he wasn't like them. He wasn't here to sip lemonade or chat about the weather. He was here for a reason. A big reason. And Linda, with her clipboard and her loud voice, was about to find out what that reason was. She thought she could push him around. She thought she could make him follow her rules. But Jake wasn't playing her game. He was playing his own. So here's the deal. This sunny afternoon in Maple Grove wasn't just another day. It was the start of something wild, something that would make Linda's jaw drop and the neighbors gasp. Jake Miller wasn't who they thought he was. He had a secret, one so big it would turn the whole neighborhood upside down. And Linda? She was walking right into it, clipboard and all. What do you think Jake's secret could be? Do you think he's hiding something cool, something scary, something funny? I want to hear your guesses. Drop them in the comments and let's see who gets close. Because trust me, what happens next is going to blow your mind. Linda thought she knew everything, but she didn't know Jake. Not yet. Linda Hayes acted like she was the queen of Maple Grove. She walked up and down the street with her nose in the air, like she owned every house, every tree, every blade of grass. Her clipboard was her crown and her pen was her scepter. She loved telling people what to do. If your mailbox was crooked, Linda would notice. If your dog barked too loud, Linda would complain. And if you dared to break one of her precious HOA rules, oh boy, you'd hear about it. She'd march right up to your door and start talking loud and fast until you wished you could hide under your porch. Now, Jake Miller was her favorite target. Ever since he moved into that little house on Oak Street, Linda had her eye on him. She didn't like him one bit. He was too quiet. He didn't smile enough. And worst of all, he didn't listen to her. Every time Jake did something, anything, Linda was there watching him like a hawk. If he mowed his lawn, she'd stand on the sidewalk squinting at him. "You missed a spot," she'd yell, pointing with her pen. As if he painted his fence, she'd shake her head and mutter, "That color's all wrong." She acted like Jake was breaking some big, important rule just by existing. But the thing that really got Linda mad, those window bars. Jake had put them up a few weeks after he moved in. They were strong metal bars that covered every window on his house. They weren't fancy or pretty, they were plain and tough, like something you'd see on a store downtown. Jake said they were for safety. He'd shrug and say, "Just want to keep things secure." But Linda, she hated them. She thought they were the ugliest things she'd ever seen. "Those window bars are an eyesore." She'd snap, her voice sharp like a teacher scolding a kid. "This isn't that kind of neighborhood, Jake. We don't do things like that here." Every time she saw those bars, she'd scribble something on her clipboard. Click, click, click went her pen, like she was writing a big list of all the ways Jake was ruining Maple Grove. She'd stand there in her shiny shoes, her hair all neat, and glare at him. "You need to take those down," she'd say. "They make your house look like a jail. What's wrong with you?" Jake never got mad. He didn't yell back. He'd just nod real calm and say, "I'll look into it, Linda." Then he'd go back to whatever he was doing, mowing, painting, hammering, like she wasn't even there. But here's the funny part. Inside, Jake was smiling. Not a big, goofy grin you could see, just a little secret smile in his head. He wasn't scared of Linda. He wasn't worried about her clipboard or her rules. See, Linda thought Jake was a pushover. She thought he was some nobody she could boss around. She'd look at him in his plain jeans and old t-shirt and think, this guy's nothing special. I can tell him what to do and he'll do it. She was so sure of herself. She strutted around like she'd already won, like Jake was just another neighbor she could control. But Linda was wrong, so wrong. Jake wasn't a pushover. He wasn't weak or soft or scared. He was tough, tougher than Linda could ever guess. He didn't argue with her because he didn't need to. He didn't care about her yelling or her clipboard. He had something else going on, something big, and he wasn't about to let Linda walk all over him. She thought she was the boss, but Jake, he was playing a different game. A smarter game. Picture this, it's a warm day and Jake's out front cutting the grass. The mower's buzzing, the sun's shining, and everything's peaceful. Then here comes Linda, stomping down the street like she's on a mission. Her clipboard's tucked under her arm and her eyes are locked on Jake. She stops right at the edge of his yard, hands on her hips. Jake Miller, she calls out, loud enough for the whole block to hear. What are you doing now? Jake turns off the mower and wipes his forehead with his sleeve. Just mowing, he says, nice and easy. Linda doesn't like that answer. She squints at him like she's trying to figure out what's wrong with him. Well, those window bars are still up, she says. I told you last week they've got to go. They're ugly, Jake. They ruin the whole street. She waves her clipboard at the house, pointing at the bars like they're a big nasty bug she wants to squash. Jake looks at her, then at the bars, then back at her. They're for safety, he says again, same as always. Linda huffs, her face turning a little red. Safety. Aha, this is Maple Grove. We don't need bars here. You're making us look bad. Jake doesn't say much. He just nods and says, I'll think about it. Then he turns the mower back on and keeps going. Linda stands there fuming. She scribbles something on her clipboard, probably something mean about Jake, and stomps off. She thinks she's won. She thinks Jake going to give in eventually. She thinks he's just some quiet guy who doesn't know how to fight back. But that's where she's wrong. Jake not giving in. He's not even close to giving up. See, Linda didn't know the real Jake. She didn't know what he was hiding. She saw a guy with a mower and a messy yard, and she thought that was all there was to him. But Jake was more than that, a lot more. He wasn't just keeping his cool because he was nice. He was keeping his cool because he had a plan. A big, sneaky plan that Linda couldn't even imagine. And every time she yelled at him, every time she waved that clipboard, she was walking right into it. The neighbors saw it happen too. They'd peek out their windows or sit on their porches, watching Linda boss Jake around. Some of them felt bad for him. Poor guy, they'd say. Linda never gonna leave him alone. Others just laughed. She's at it again. They'd chuckle, sipping their iced tea, but none of them helped Jake. None of them told Linda to stop. They just watched like it was a show on TV. They didn't think Jake could do anything about it. They didn't think he'd fight back. They were wrong, too. Day after day, Linda kept coming. One time, Jake was painting his fence a nice blue color. Linda marched over and said, "That's too bright, it doesn't match the neighborhood." Another time, he parked his truck in the driveway and she complained, "It's too big, move it to the garage." Every little thing Jake did, Linda had something to say about it. And every time Jake just nodded and said, "I'll look into it." He never got mad. He never raised his voice. He just kept going, calm and steady, like a rock in a river. But inside, Jake was ready. He wasn't going to let Linda win. He wasn't going to take down those window bars or change his fence or move his truck just because she said so. He had a reason for everything he did, a reason Linda didn't understand. She thought she was in charge, but she was. Jake was tougher than she'd ever know, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to show her. So what do you think? Was Linda about to get a big surprise? Was Jake going to let her keep bossing him around forever, or was he going to do something about it? I bet you've got some ideas. Imagine being Jake. Would you stay quiet, or would you tell Linda off? Maybe you'd come up with a sneaky way to trick her, huh? Whatever you're thinking, this story about to get wild. Linda's got no idea what's coming, and Jake, he's got a secret that's going to change everything. Stick with me because the fun's just starting. Weeks went by in Maple Grove, and things started heating up. Linda Hayes, the HOA queen, wasn't slowing down. Nope, she was getting louder, bossier, and bolder every single day. She'd strut down Oak Street like she owned it, her clipboard flapping in the wind, her eyes locked on Jake Miller's little house. She didn't like him one bit, and she wasn't shy about showing it. Every chance she got, she'd find something new to complain about. It was like a game to her, a game she thought she was winning. One morning, Linda banged on Jake's door so hard the windows rattled. Bam, bam, bam. Jake opened it, still in his pajamas, rubbing sleepy eyes. "What now, Linda?" he asked, nice and calm. Linda didn't waste a second. "Those ugly window bars," she shouted, pointing at them like they'd bitten her. "They're still up. I told you 100 times to take them down." Jake leaned against the doorframe, looking at her with that quiet little smile. "They're for safety," he said, same as always. Linda's face turned red. "Safety? Ha, you're ruining this neighborhood." She scribbled something on her clipboard and stormed off, muttering about rules and standards. But that wasn't the end of it. Oh no. The next day Linda was back. This time it was about Jake's truck. He'd parked it in his driveway just like he always did. It was an old blue pickup, a little rusty but tough as nails. Linda hated it. She marched right up to Jake while he was watering his flowers. "That truck," she barked, waving her pen at it. "It's too big, it's too loud. Move it to the garage right now." Jake turned off the hose and looked at her. "It's fine where it is," he said, cool as a cucumber. Linda huffed. "Fine, fine. This isn't a junkyard, Jake." She wrote something else on her clipboard and stomped away. Then a few days later, she found something new to pick on. Jake had stacked his trash cans by the curb for pickup day. They were neat and tidy, just two cans side by side, but Linda didn't think so. She came charging over, her shoes clicking on the pavement. "Jake Miller," she yelled. "What's this mess? Your trash cans are stacked all wrong. They're too close together." Jake was on his porch, sipping a glass of water. He looked at the cans, then at Linda. "They're just trash cans," he said, shrugging. Linda's eyes got big. "Just trash cans? I'm calling the HOA board about this," she shouted. "You're breaking every rule we have." Jake didn't say a word. He just watched her march off, that little smile creeping back onto his face. See, Jake stayed quiet. He didn't yell, he didn't argue, he didn't even look mad. Every time Linda came at him with her complaints, he'd nod or shrug or say something simple like, "I'll look into it." But he never changed a thing. The window bars stayed up. The truck stayed in the driveway. The trash cans stayed stacked the way he liked them. Linda thought he was ignoring her because he was scared or lazy. She thought she was wearing him down. But Jake, he wasn't scared. He wasn't lazy. He was watching her every move. Linda didn't notice how Jake's eyes followed her. She didn't see how he paid attention to everything she said and did. She was too busy yelling and writing on her clipboard. She'd bang on his door, wave her pen, and strut away, thinking she'd won. But Jake was like a cat watching a mouse. Quiet, patient, smart. He wasn't just sitting there taking it. He was waiting for the right time to do something big. One afternoon, things got really interesting. Jake was in his garage working on something. The big door was open and you could hear clanking and banging coming from inside. Linda happened to walk by, her clipboard under her arm, her nose in the air. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw Jake. He was bent over a table, messing with some tools and wires. There were metal pieces scattered around, and a little light was blinking on something in his hands. Linda smirked, that mean little smile she always had when she thought she'd caught someone doing something wrong. "What's that?" she sneered, stepping closer. "Some junk project, you turning your garage into a dump now." Jake looked up, wiping his hands on a rag. He grinned, not his usual quiet smile, but a bigger one, like he was enjoying a secret joke. "Something like that," he said, nice and easy. Linda laughed, a sharp, loud laugh. "Figures, you can't even keep your house right, and now you're making trash in here." She shook her head and scribbled on her clipboard. "The HOA's going to hear about this, too." Then she turned and walked off, her shoes clicking away. But here's the thing, Jake wasn't working on junk. He wasn't fixing a car or building a shelf or messing with some old radio. Nope, he was setting up something big, something important, something Linda wouldn't see coming in a million years. Those wires, that blinking light, the metal pieces, they weren't trash. They were part of a plan Jake had been working on ever since he moved to Maple Grove. Linda thought she'd caught him being silly or sloppy, but she was so wrong. Jake wasn't playing around. He was getting ready. What do you think he was up to? Can you guess? Was he building something cool, something sneaky, something that would make Linda's jaw drop? I bet you've got some ideas. Jake wasn't the kind of guy to waste time on junk. He was smart, he was tough, and he was tired of Linda thinking she could boss him around. Every bang of his hammer, every twist of his screwdriver was bringing him closer to the moment when everything would change. The neighbors started noticing too. They walk by Jake's house and peek into the garage. "What's he doing in there?" they'd whisper to each other. Some thought he was fixing up an old bike. Others thought he was making a birdhouse or something boring. Nobody guessed the truth. Nobody knew what Jake was really up to. They'd see Linda yelling at him and they'd shake their heads. "Poor Jake," they'd say. "Linda never gonna let up." But Jake didn't need their pity. He didn't need anyone's help. He had everything under control. Day after day, Linda kept coming. She'd complain about the window bars, she'd fuss about the truck, she'd even grumble about the noise from the garage. "What's all that banging?" she'd yell. "You're disturbing the peace." Jake would just nod and say, "I'll keep it down." But he didn't stop. He kept working, kept tinkering, kept smiling that little smile. Linda thought she was winning. She thought Jake was too quiet to fight back. She thought she could keep pushing him forever. But Jake wasn't quiet because he was weak. He was quiet because he was strong. He was watching Linda get bolder and bolder, and he was letting her. Why? Because every time she banged on his door or yelled about his trash cans, she was giving him more time to finish his plan, more time to set up his big surprise. Linda didn't know it, but she was walking right into a trap Jake had been building all along. So what was he making in that garage? What was his big secret? I'm not telling you yet. You've got to keep watching because it's about to get good, really good. Linda thought she had Jake all figured out, but she didn't. She thought she was the boss, but she was. Jake was ready to show her and everyone else in Maple Grove that he wasn't just some regular guy. He was something more, something amazing. One evening, the sun was setting over Maple Grove, painting the sky orange and pink. It was a quiet night until Linda Hayes decided she'd had enough. She was in her yard watering her perfect flowers when she looked across the street. There was Jake Miller standing on a ladder by his house, messing with those window bars again. He had a screwdriver in his hand, tightening something, calm as could be. Linda's eyes narrowed. Those bars, those ugly metal bars, were her biggest enemy. She told him 100 times to take them down, but there they were, still up, mocking her. And that was it. Linda lost it. She dropped her watering can with a clang and marched to the edge of her yard. "Jake Miller," she shouted, her voice loud enough to wake the whole neighborhood. "What are you doing? I've had it with those bars." Jake glanced over at her, not even surprised. He kept working, turning the screwdriver like he didn't hear her. Linda's face turned redder than a tomato. She whipped out her phone from her pocket, holding it up like a weapon. "That's it," she barked. "I'm calling 911. Those bars are a safety violation, and I'm done warning you." She paced back and forth in her yard, dialing the number with shaky, angry fingers. "Hello, yes, this is Linda Hayes from Maple Grove," she yelled into the phone. "I've got a neighbor breaking every rule in the book. He's got dangerous bars on his windows, and I want something done about it right now." She kept packing, her shoes stomping the grass flat. "Yes, Oak Street, send someone quick." She hung up and crossed her arms, glaring at Jake with a smug little grin. She thought she'd won. She thought the police would come, see those bars, and make Jake take them down. Oh, she was so sure of herself. Jake didn't say a word. He climbed down from the ladder, slow and steady, and leaned against his porch. His arms were crossed, his face calm, like he was waiting for a bus. He didn't look mad, he didn't look scared. He just stood there watching Linda pace and huff. The neighbors started peeking out their windows. Curtains twitched, heads popped up, and whispers floated through the air. "What's Linda up to now?" they mumbled. "Poor Jake's in trouble again." Everyone thought Linda had finally beaten him. Everyone thought Jake was done for. Minutes ticked by, 5, then 10. Linda kept checking her watch, tapping her foot, that grin getting bigger. Then finally they heard it. Sirens, wazzle, wazzle. A police car turned onto Oak Street, its red and blue lights flashing bright in the fading daylight. It rolled up slow, tires crunching on the pavement, and stopped right in front of Jake's house. Linda's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. "Here they are," she said, clapping her hands. "Now you're in for it, Jake." She stood there, arms crossed, ready to watch the cops tell Jake off. The car doors opened and 2 officers stepped out. They were tall, wearing dark uniforms with shiny badges. One had a hat pulled low over his eyes and the other carried a little notebook. Linda bounced on her toes, waiting for them to march over to her and ask what was wrong. But they didn't. Nope, they didn't even look at her. Instead, they walked straight to Jake. Straight to him. Linda's grin froze. Her eyes got wide. What was happening? "Hey, Miller," the first cop said, his voice friendly and loud. He clapped Jake on the shoulder like they were old buddies. "Everything okay here?" The second cop nodded at Jake, smiling a little. "Heard there was some trouble," he said, flipping open his notebook. Jake shrugged, still leaning against the porch. "Just Linda being Linda," he said, his voice cool and easy. The cops chuckled like it was a joke they all knew. Linda's jaw dropped. It hit the ground so fast you could almost hear it thunk. Her phone slipped from her hand and landed in the grass. She stood there, frozen, staring at the cops and Jake. What?" she stammered. "What's going on? Why are you talking to him?" The first cop turned to her, tipping his hat a little. "Ma'am," he said, "we're just checking in with our guy here." Linda blinked. "Your guy?" she squeaked. "What do you mean, your guy?" And that's when it hit her. That's when the big reveal came crashing down like a bucket of cold water. See, Jake wasn't just some random guy. He wasn't just a quiet neighbor with a truck and some window bars. Nope, Jake Miller was an undercover cop, a real-life police officer living right there in Maple Grove, keeping an eye on everything. Those window bars, they weren't just for show, they were part of his job, that truck. It wasn't just some old junker, it was how he got around without looking suspicious. And Linda, she'd just called his own team on him. The cops kept talking to Jake like nothing was wrong. Heard the call come in, the second cop said, scribbling in his notebook. Figured we'd swing by and see what's up. Jake grinned, that same quiet grin he always had. She's mad about the bars again, he said, nodding toward Linda. The first cop laughed. Same old story, huh? They weren't mad. They weren't here to arrest Jake or tell him off. They were here because they knew him. They worked with him. Linda's face went from red to white in 2 seconds flat. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. You're a cop, she whispered, her voice tiny now. Jake turned to her, his arms still crossed. Yep, he said, simple as that. Been here a while, keeping things safe. He didn't brag, he didn't shout, he just said it like it was no big deal. But to Linda, it was a huge deal. Her whole world flipped upside down right there on Oak Street. The neighbors gasped. Windows flew open wider. Did he say cop? Someone whispered. Jake, a policeman, another voice squeaked. Kids on bikes stopped riding and stared. Old Mr. Jenkins dropped his lemonade glass and it shattered on his porch. Everyone was watching now, eyes big, mouths open. Linda had called 911 on Jake, thinking she'd get him in trouble, but she'd just called his friends. How's that for a twist? Linda tried to talk. But the bars, she stammered. They're ugly, they're against the rules. The first cop raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, he said, those bars are fine, they're up to code, and Jake's got every right to have them. Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. But the HOA, she squeaked. The second cop shook his head. HOA doesn't get to boss around an officer doing his job, he said. You might want to relax a little. Now Jake didn't say much more, he didn't need to. The cops clapped him on the shoulder again. See you later, Miller, the first one said. Call if you need us. They climbed back into their car, waved at Jake, and drove off, sirens quiet now. Linda stood there, alone in her yard, her clipboard hanging limp in her hand. Her smug grin was gone, her loud voice was gone. She looked small, confused, and very, very surprised. Now Jake turned back to his ladder, picking up his screwdriver like nothing happened. He climbed up and kept working on those bars, calm as ever. The neighbors kept staring, whispering, buzzing with excitement. Linda had no clue she'd been yelling at a cop all this time. She had no clue she'd just made the biggest mistake of her HOA life. Jake wasn't just some guy she could boss around. He was the real deal, an undercover hero right under her nose. How's that for a twist? Linda thought she was so smart, but Jake had the last laugh. She called 911 thinking she'd win, but she just showed everyone how wrong she was. Jake didn't need to fight her with words or fists. He let the truth do it for him. And boy, did that truth hit hard. Stick around, because this story's not over yet. Linda's got some learning to do and Jake's still got more to show. The police officers turned to Linda, and she looked like she wanted to disappear. Her hands were shaking so bad her clipboard wobbled like a leaf in the wind. She tried to talk, but all that came out was BB. But the first cop, the one with the hat, shook his head. "Ma'am," he said, nice but firm, "you're wasting our time." Linda's eyes got big. "Wasting your time?" she squeaked. The second cop nodded. "Yep, those window bars, they're totally fine. They're up to code, and Jake, he's one of us." Linda's face turned as red as a fire truck. She didn't know what to say. The cops kept going, explaining it all so everyone could hear. "Jake not breaking any rules," the first cop said. "He's here keeping the place safe. That's his job." The second cop added, "Those bars aren't trouble, they're helping. You don't need to worry." Linda just stood there, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to catch flies. She'd been so sure Jake was wrong, but now she was the one who looked silly. The neighbors couldn't believe it. They peeked out their windows, hiding behind curtains, whispering to each other. "Jake's a cop," one said. "Linda called the police on a policeman." Another giggled. They watched as Linda took a step back, then another, her clipboard hanging low. She didn't strut or yell this time. Nope. She slunk back to her house, head down like a dog with its tail between its legs. She was defeated, and everyone could see it. Now, Jake didn't cheer or laugh. He didn't need to gloat. He just stood there on his porch, arms crossed, that quiet smile back on his face. He didn't have to say, "I told you so." The truth did all the talking for him. And the truth, it was loud and clear. Jake was the good guy and Linda had been wrong all along. After that night, things changed in Maple Grove. The next day, old Mr. Jenkins waved at Jake from his porch. "Morning, officer," he called, holding up a cup. "Want some coffee?" Jake smiled and waved back. "Sure, thanks." Kids on bikes rode by and shouted, "Hi, Jake," like he was their new hero. Even Mrs. Carter, who never talked to anyone, stopped by to ask his advice about her squeaky gate. "You're a cop," she said. "You must know stuff." Jake just nodded and helped her fix it. Linda, she stayed quiet, real quiet. She didn't bang on doors anymore. She didn't wave her clipboard or yell about rules. She kept her distance, staying in her yard, watering her flowers with her head down. Her days as the HOA tyrant were over. No one was scared of her now. They didn't have to be. Jake had shown everyone who she really was, just a loud lady who didn't know as much as she thought. Now justice feels pretty sweet, doesn't it? Linda tried to boss Jake around, but she ended up looking foolish. Jake didn't fight her with fists or shouts. He let the truth win, and it worked. Maple Grove was a happier place now, and Jake, he was the hero they didn't know they had. The sun was going down over Maple Grove, turning the sky all pink and gold. It was a pretty sight, and everything felt calm. Jake Miller stood on his porch, leaning against the railing, looking out at the street. It was quieter now, no more yelling, no more banging doors, no more Linda strutting around like she owned the place. The neighborhood felt different, like it could finally take a big happy breath. Jake didn't say much, just watched the kids riding bikes and the birds flying home to their nests. He had that little smile on his face, the one that said he knew more than he let on. Think about it for a second. Sometimes the person you think is a nobody, the quiet one who doesn't talk a lot or make a big fuss, turns out to be the strongest of all. Jake was like that. Everyone thought he was just some regular guy with a messy yard and funny window bars. Linda thought he was a pushover she could boss around. The neighbors thought he was boring. But Jake, he was the one holding it all together. He wasn't just living there to mow his lawn or paint his fence. He was there to keep Maple Grove safe, even when no one knew it. That's pretty cool, right? And then there's the other side, the ones who judge too fast, like Linda. She looked at Jake and decided he was trouble before she even said hi. She saw his truck, his bars, his quiet ways, and thought, this guy's no good. She didn't wait to find out who he really was. She didn't ask questions or try to be nice. She just yelled and pointed and wrote stuff on her clipboard. And guess what? She missed the real story. She missed the truth about Jake because she was too busy thinking she knew everything. That's a big lesson. Sometimes the people who act the loudest are the ones who see the least. So here's something to think about. Next time you see someone keeping to themselves, don't be so quick to decide what they're like. Maybe they're shy, maybe they're busy, or maybe, just maybe, they're someone amazing like Jake. You never know who's hiding a big secret or doing something brave right under your nose. A smile can go a long way. A wave, a hi, a little kindness, that's all it takes. You might make a friend or you might find out something awesome. Either way, it's better than judging and missing out, don't you think? Now, Jake's story shows us that the quiet ones can be the heroes. He didn't need to shout or fight to win. He just stayed calm, did his job, and let the truth come out when it was time. And when it did, wow, it was a surprise no one saw coming. Linda learned her lesson, the neighbors got a hero, and Maple Grove turned into a better place. That's what happens when you give people a chance. That's what happens when you don't judge a book by its cover. Thanks for sticking with me all the way to the end. I had so much fun telling you Jake's story, and I hope you loved it too. What did you think of his big reveal? Were you surprised when the cops showed up and called him Miller? Did you cheer when Linda finally backed off? I want to hear everything. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and they make my day. Oh, and tell me where you're watching from. Are you at home, at school? Maybe outside with the sun setting like it is in Maple Grove. This isn't goodbye, it's just see you later. I've got more stories coming, full of twists and fun just like this one. So roll over to see more Jake, not the only hero in town, there's more where he came from. So hit that subscribe button and I'll catch you in the next story. Stay awesome and keep smiling. You never know who's watching. See ya soon.